Hello. Going to get straight to the point because it's very cold and it's nearly dark and I don't want anything to get in the way of this video, so I'll even skip the usual introduction. I want to talk about the laws when it comes to crossbows in Britain, and I'll get to talking about the purpose of the video a bit later on. It's really simple. You can only fire them on your own land, and that's not all there is to it. If you shoot somebody in your garden, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But generally, if you're safe and you're in your own garden or your larger area of land and not one bolt or arrow, if you prefer, leaves your own land, then you're fine. Doesn't mean that somebody seeing you with one through the window or something like that won't report you, and the police today are likely to come to talk to you about it, even if you haven't broken a law, even if you're doing nothing wrong at all. We recently saw a case where, I can't remember the police force, this was talked about by Scholar Gladiatoria, Matt Easton, where the police seized a lot of weapons, all of which were completely illegal. They proudly boasted about it online. You cannot rely on the police to know the law, and you cannot rely on them to not treat you harshly, even if you haven't broken the law. Let's frame things very, very well. Here's 2 bits of oak. Perfectly reasonable to have bits of building material, yet if I join them with a short chain between here and here, it's illegal. It's illegal to buy, and it's probably illegal to have. It's a little bit more complex than that. You might be okay if you persuade them that it's just for practice, but I wouldn't count on it. You'll probably be safer with a couple of bits of rope and not having any kind of swivel mechanism. A lot of it with the police depends on what they think, what they guess, and then you have to defend yourself, and you have to also defend yourself in court, and you may be dealing with people who will interpret the law very poorly. This does happen. If you think the British legal system is infallible, then you have a lot more confidence in it than me. But let's just frame this situation properly. This, with a couple of bits of chain joining them, is illegal to buy. This is perfectly legal to buy. This is obviously many, many times more dangerous. This is a tool, of course. I use it for taking the excess off branches before cutting them up to put them into the garden waste bin. But that just shows you how absurd British laws are. Why are these illegal? Because somebody told somebody who's an MP that ninjas use these, and ninjas are very dangerous. Similarly, shuriken are illegal. You might like to call them throwing stars. Trying to suggest they are more dangerous than this is an act of idiocy. Yeah, they are illegal. This is illegal. Now, a lot of people would say, but this is likely to be used as a tool, and these are only a weapon. Well, that's complete rubbish. I would argue that the vast majority of people who have ever bought nunchaku, or nunchuckers if you prefer, not in Britain because you can't now, but in America, just wave them about in their garden, play with their friends, and they probably don't injure themselves because it's not really that dangerous an item. I could really upset some people now by talking about how it's a completely fictional weapon and there's no evidence whatsoever that anybody in Japan or anywhere else ever used them as a real weapon. But that's definitely for a subject for another time. Back to the law. So use them only on your own land. Make sure the bolts never leave your own land. Don't shoot anybody. If you want to travel anywhere with them, they must be disabled. Good way, of course, is to remove the prod, but I expect you'd get away with it if you had a chain bike lock and you make sure it can't be loaded, and you keep the bolts or arrows in a separate part of your vehicle. You can only take them to a place to use where it's legal for you to use them. That means a club that has insurance, or perhaps a good friend's property. But if you were to go to a friend's house to use one, I would be very careful. I would want an email from them, or perhaps you could have a quick discussion on video explaining the situation, that you plan to be safe and they've given you permission to, because if you're at your friend's house and your friend overestimates his ability to use it and shoots right down the garden and a bolt goes flying over into the neighbour's garden, don't be surprised if the neighbour takes offence and decides to treat things in a very angry way and the police turn up at the door. Your friend all of a sudden says, I didn't even know he had it, I had no idea what was going on, because people are like that sometimes, and when it becomes a serious matter, their convictions change. That's really it. You can't take it anywhere, you can't shoot anything with it except for pieces of wood or targets, boxes. You certainly can't hunt with them in this country, even if you are a farmer, some other sort of a landowner, and you're allowed to hunt things on your property. You can't use a crossbow. I used to know very nearby to here a farmer who raised his own pheasants and kept them on his property and shot them. He was allowed to shoot them with a shotgun, wouldn't have been allowed to use a crossbow, because the laws in Britain are simply like that. Now, I wanted to say this because I want to make more crossbow videos, and I'm always going to precede them with this, so I just talk about the law a little bit. Yes, that's because there is a risk of people seeing your videos and the British police reacting to things badly, and it's a good idea to have this explanation at the beginning of them. But when I previously made a crossbow video, I tried to cram everything into one, and it was far too long. I'm trying to make this a lot shorter and not ramble on so much. There seems to be interest in crossbow videos because well over a year since I made my last crossbow video, which I didn't do well at all, people still comment on it. So it must be a subject that there's a lot of interest in, and I do like crossbows. It's third place or fourth place as a hobby of mine. Music first, martial arts second, weightlifting third. But I still like them, want to use them more, and I do have some interesting things I think to say about them. So, and some interesting things to do with them. So I would like to make more, and this will accompany them as a card in a video explaining how to use them, how not to use them. I definitely want to make them more concise, so I'm going to split the previous video I made into a number of them. This is the one talking about the legal things. I want to do a new test very soon based on the previous video, which was one where I looked at two crossbows that supposedly both have £90 prods and have a very different FPS reported when you go to buy them. And that received a lot of comments. I think the test was pretty reasonable, but I ran out of power for the microphone, and a lot of other things went wrong. I'll get onto that in a minute. I'm going to talk about some other aspects of crossbow use. One is clubs. One person said to me in reply to that video, why don't you start your own club? I'd like to, but as I've already mentioned, it's not a primary hobby of mine, and also I've considered it. Just mentioned a farmer who lives nearby, and he has a lot of land to spare, and you could approach him and say, how much will it cost? What sort of regulations do we need? What do we have to do to come and shoot on your land? Well, I know he wouldn't allow that. I know this because a long time ago he has quite a large pond, don't think of a garden pond, almost a small lake on his land, and some people were talking to him about allowing fishing in it, and it was really stocked, and he said no way, because you've got insurance to worry about. As soon as people are coming along and they're paying to use something, they start to make demands, much too much of a pain. Don't want the trouble. And the same would be true even if you just wanted a bunch of people who are going to turn up, use targets. When you're talking about a field that's several hundred meters long, there's no danger of hitting somebody behind it unless somebody's there who shouldn't be. And then you've got legal considerations, you've got insurance. It's a complex matter. One person, I can't remember the post. I don't spend a lot of time looking at posts, and that's a shame sometimes because I do get some quite good ones, especially when it comes to the weight training. Somebody, I can't remember exactly what they said, but they seem to think it's completely untrue that you often find archery clubs won't allow you to use crossbows. I haven't looked at my video. I don't often look at my videos after editing them. But I don't think I said it's always the case. But it's often the case. I've seen people comment on this quite a lot, and the club that's nearest to me, about 10 miles away, does not allow you to use crossbows, which is why I found it a particular note. It's really fairly dark now, but this is a low light camera and it's doing pretty good. So I'll carry on. Now you have the National Field Archery Association, which does allow crossbows, and that has over 160 clubs. And I don't see any restrictions mentioned there. You've got Archery GB, and the main body allows you to use them, but with a maximum draw weight of 95 pounds. And they also don't allow pistol crossbows. Of course, you do get crossbows with a draw weight of less than 95 pounds, but they're not that common, and I don't know if they'll be that much fun to use, because when I use the pistol crossbows using a very light bolt, I find they really start to drop after about 15 feet, and I've got another crossbow with a 130 pound pull on it, and if I try to shoot, let's say 60 foot down the garden, then it really starts to fall even in that time. That has a slightly larger bolt, of course. It just makes me think that a crossbow with a draw of no more than 95 pounds can't be very good for target shooting. But I haven't used one, but except for the pistol crossbows, I'm sure it can only be worse with the heavier bolts of a larger crossbow. So it's somewhat contradictory, and you can't use pistol crossbows at those clubs. That will be, I'm sure, just because of stigma attached to things, just like with two sticks joined together called nunchaku. People just think certain things are meant for crime and for offence only and can't be sporting. Well, I've got what you would call a pistol crossbow, but it has a stock on it, and it's only about 8 inches shorter than a full-size crossbow, and I use that for targets shooting a lot, more than any other, because sometimes between exercise sets in my exercise shed, I take a few shots while I'm relaxing, and I like using it, and it has pretty good sights on it too. So any idea that pistol crossbows are just these cheap half plastic things that you get that cost £20 and are no good except for as a toy isn't entirely accurate. Although that said, as I mentioned in my last video, you should consider a crossbow with a £90 prod as little more than a toy. It doesn't mean it can't be dangerous. You can poke somebody in the eye with a toy gun and hurt them, but it's not going to do much to damage somebody. I would say because it's very cold, it's just above freezing, I've got 3 layers on here, and I expect a pistol crossbow from 15 foot away wouldn't penetrate this. Might give me a little bit of a bruise. It's not that dangerous a weapon. Near to Bedford, a woman had a pistol crossbow, and I can't remember the precise details, but you can find it if you search for it. And some burglars, I think it was something to do with drugs, entered her house, and she tried to shoot one of them, didn't do anything at all. The police confiscated it. Don't blame them in this case, because as soon as you shoot somebody with something, then you make yourself a target. And it's also a really bad idea to try to use something like that to defend yourself because of our stupid laws. If you use a weapon in your house to defend yourself, not only will you have the trauma of having been burgled, having your house invaded, but you're also going to be in a lot of legal trouble because our legal system has many problems with it. Perhaps they all do. Talked about the crossbow clubs. Here's one thing in relation to my previous video. Somebody or a few people were absolutely obsessed with my saying that they'll be banned soon. The crossbows will be banned soon. And I haven't watched the video, as I say, but I'm pretty sure I was talking about something else and I just turned around and said, oh, and they're going to be banned soon. I haven't bought any more, largely because I expected to be banned. Either one person has made a number of accounts to make posts about that, in which case, if you're watching this, see a doctor, because we're talking about something bordering on psychosis. Or a number of people have made similar comments that sound very similar. Some people have just said, no, I don't think it's going to happen. Perfectly reasonable. But some people have been quite abusive. One person wasn't abusive. He said, I bet you feel stupid now they haven't been banned. Well, I often feel stupid, but not because of that video, not because of many of my videos, but some of them make me feel pretty stupid, especially when I stutter and make a mess of speaking. And the video in question, I ran out of battery power, didn't realise, carried on making it. I had actually spent a long time trying to prepare something for that video. So yes, I felt pretty stupid, but not for the reasons he thought. He said he thinks it's wrong, I'm wrong because they haven't been banned yet. Well, let's have a look at the potential for a ban. There was a consultation, one example of me mixing up words, at the beginning of 2024. It's cold and my lips are nearly frozen. That's my excuse. It really is that cold. And that was closed in April 2024. I replied to it. I hope you did if you're interested in crossbows and you live in Britain, and I hope you, like me, try to explain the situation to people. And I do not believe that crossbows in particular represent a threat when it comes to crime. Here's a quick interruption. I forgot one very important point. I mentioned that the consultation launched by the Conservative parties was over in April 2024. Then what happened? I'm sure they plan to move on very quickly to at the very least change legislation, but I expect ban crossbows in Britain. And what happened? Something very significant. They lost power, another party gained power. You can't have much more of a tumultuous event in the political system for a country. Then, what's happened? I do believe Labour are even more likely to ban the crossbows, but they have been in complete turmoil ever since, fighting in one direction or another. They have been trying to make a lot of significant changes, which takes a lot of time in Parliament. They have no time for anything secondary. And I don't want to make it very political. I'm not a supporter of either party. I don't like many politicians, and I think they're all self-interested liars. Subject for another time. Talking about the way laws are in the UK, let's just associate that. We have politicians who wanted to deal with offensive websites by dealing with Google. That's like having a shop that sells offensive weapons in town and trying to do something about the yellow pages who are advertising the shop rather than the shop itself. That's how little our politicians often know about matters they will legislate over. Labour have been in absolute turmoil. They have not been able to concentrate on anything but keeping their heads above water for the people at the top of the party, and a lot of infighting elsewhere. So that's why, since I made that video and suggested crossbows will be banned very soon, they haven't been banned. They've had no opportunity to do anything like that. It's not because the desire to do so isn't there, and who knows what the future holds. Things are going to be in a mess, but if they can get to it, I'm sure they will. I hope they don't. Very much hope they don't. Onwards with the rest of them. There was some really good replies, and one person explained to me that you often have crossbows sold with a £90 prod, and they don't have a £90 prod, and this is more likely with your cheap pistol crossbows, and that would explain it very well. And I'm going to be doing a test, a much better test soon, precisely because of that. I have scales, hanging scales, and it's a really good idea for me to just rig something up so I can pull it, apply weight or pull it. I'll probably pull it because I don't want to spend too much time preparing the test, and I can see exactly how much weight it takes to pull those prods, and that will answer the question. And that's what I really should do. So I appreciate the person who sent me that message, and that really does explain what I should do to get to the bottom of it. In case you didn't watch the other video, 2 pistol crossbows, both supposedly with £90 prod, and I can't understand why, when the draw length is the same, why they have such different force reportedly. And that's why I did the experiment with lots of pieces of cardboard. Here's a look at the results to see if there really was that much difference in power, and I was surprised to find there was. Now this brings me to the second most stupid reply to my video, and this person, I'm going to say, I don't like to be abusive and disparaging, but he's an idiot. He said, oh well, you find out that one more powerful crossbow, it penetrates. He probably didn't use the word penetrate. I doubt he used any words that didn't only have one syllable in them. But he said, you find out that the stronger crossbow is more powerful. No shit, Sherlock. Well, no, you completely misunderstood the situation. The point was, they're supposed to be of the same power, yet one is supposed to have a higher FPS than the other. And that's why there's the question. Not that it's not the case that one's supposed to be more powerful. I'm not going to compare a £175 pull crossbow, which I have, to a £90 pull crossbow, but they're both £90 pulls, so therefore they should have the same power, but apparently they don't. And the test did verify that they don't, and I'll do something better to examine that and find out exactly why very soon, hopefully in the next couple of days. There was one more comment, and I do feel, actually, there are 2 more. One person said, no, ban swords, don't ban crossbows. Well, it's not me who's doing the banning, and I don't think we should ban either. But why do you think it's a good idea to ban swords instead? He actually said ban my swords. There are some strange people online. There's some really good people. Considering the messages I get, far more are from good people who are often very helpful and some appreciative. But there are some strange people out there, and it's taught me that really. You see, I spend a fair bit of time online, but I don't hang around on social media very much. So I'm not exposed to a lot of people who may not be very thoughtful or careful about matters, and when I am, sometimes it can be surprising. But no, banning swords isn't the solution, and there's no good telling me, because I'm not the one who's doing the banning anyway. I don't think anything should be banned. But here is the really, really stupid comment. This person, they don't think very much. A few people made somewhat sarcastic comments, don't blame them, and some were funny. When I said that if you find you have a house invasion, lock yourself in the room, call the police. Well, I really do think that's a very good idea. Maybe I could talk about that in more detail in the future. But one person said, yes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. And that's a joke he's making, perfectly reasonable. Somebody else came along and said, you idiot, you think you should just lock yourself in the room, you're stupid. Well, I tell you what would be idiotic. making a video in Britain where any use of a weapon intentionally, any at all, unless it's in HEMA or something similar to that, or fencing, any use of a weapon is highly illegal, and if you advise somebody to use a weapon, you're probably going to be in trouble. So what would be stupid is not suggesting that people lock themselves in a room and call the police and don't do anything else. What would be stupid would be making a video in Britain telling people to use a weapon to defend themselves in the house. That would be really stupid. Right, I hope that's not too long. Soon is coming a video where I perform another test where I've got a better material, much quicker to shoot crossbows into, to look at the comparative penetrative ability, and then I will get on with the one where I just pull the prods back with fitted strings. There's a couple of things I need to do with a certain hook to do it so it's very clean and even, and then we can get to the bottom of it once and for all and see if they're both really fitted with 90-pound prods, and if one of them is 60-pound, 70-pound, that really explains everything. I wanted to do this because I didn't like the other video, ran out of power and it went wrong, it was messy, it was much too long. Hopefully this one's no more than about 15 minutes at the most, but there's clearly interest in crossbow videos, so I'm going to make more of them. And that's it then. It's really cold. It's going to be Christmas in less than 12 hours, so I'll say happy Christmas to you. Hope you have a good one, good time with the family, and thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.